Hello guys, Teacher Simpa here, and I'd like to welcome you to our virtual classroom. Today, I'm going to discuss with you a third grading topic of grade 7 mathematics, that is, angles formed by parallel lines cut by a transversal. Are we ready? Before we start, we need to review some important terms that are useful in our discussion. Number one is congruent, the word congruent. When we say congruent, that means they are of the same shape and the same size. When we say angles are congruent, it is when they are of the same size. So that means equal. So equal and congruent are the same thing. So equal in measure, either by degrees or by radians. Sides. When sides are congruent, that means to say they are of the same length. Okay? Second, vertical angles. Do you remember vertical angles? Vertical angles are the angles opposite each other when two lines cross. Okay? When two lines cross, in either way, every opposite angles are called vertical angles. And the interesting thing here is that vertical angles are equal. Again, the word equal is tantamount or synonymous to the word congruent, so we may use the word congruent. The vertical angles are always congruent. Next, supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are the angles that when we add up their measures, it is equal to 180 degrees. And they don't have to be next to each other, meaning they don't need to be adjacent to each other. Just so long as the total is 180 degrees, then the two angles are said to be supplementary. Okay? So I guess we are ready with our topic today. Relationship of angles formed by parallel lines cut by a transversal. First thing is, we need to define what is a transversal. I'm sure everybody understands what are parallel lines, but how about transversal? Maybe to some, this is no longer new. They might have come across the word transversal when they were in the elementary level, right? So transversal is a line that crosses at least two other lines. Look at our example here. It says that the red line is a transversal in each of these examples. So red line here. The red line, as you can see, crosses two blue lines. So the two blue lines, some of them aren't parallel, and while at the center, as you can see, obviously the blue lines are parallel to each other, and there is a red line that comes across. In the third picture, there are also blue lines that are being crossed by a red line. Remember, these red lines are transversals, according to the definition of transversal, okay? So we are going to study here the angles that are formed by a transversal crossing a pair of parallel lines, just like this example here in the middle. Okay, let's take a look. There are pairs of angles that are formed when a pair of parallel lines got crossed by a transversal. Look at that. And it says here, when parallel lines get crossed by a transversal, many angles are congruent, as in this example. Yes, here, there's 118 degrees. Opposite to it is also 118. At the side of this 118 is 62. And there is also another 62 degrees opposite. And below it is also another 118 degrees. At the side is 62 degrees. Opposite again is 62 degrees. And at the side of it is 118 degrees. What do you think are these angles? Okay, let's proceed. Look at that. Let's try to name the angles. So instead of those measures, we are naming the angles as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. Okay, what do you think are the relationships of these pairs of angles? let's take a look at A and D. If you remember, look at that. A and D would refer to this angle here. A is 118 and D must also be 118. Why do you think? Look, A and D, they're paired. Also C and B are paired. E and H, F and G. If you notice, these pairs of angles are situated opposite to each other, right? So we call these angles as vertical angles. So vertical angles also are formed from parallel lines cut by a transversal. And of course, vertical angles are congruent. Yes, always congruent. Okay? Can we proceed to the next? We have another pair. We can create another pairing of angles. A while ago, that was letter A or angle A was paired to angle D. This time, what if A is paired to angle E? What is their relationship now? When A and D were paired, they are called vertical angles. But this time, it's A and E. And also, C and G. It's no longer C and B. And there is also a partner or a pair of B and F. And then D and H. These pairs of angles are what we call corresponding angles. Okay? Do you see the difference? Vertical are the angles opposite to each other. While corresponding angles, if you notice, they are, how do you say that? They are somehow on the relative position, right? If you notice, A and E are both in the same side of the transversal. This is the transversal, and A and D are located at the left side. However, A is in the upper angle of the first line here being crossed, while also E is on the upper angle of the second line from the pair of parallel lines, of course. Okay? Also C and G, look at C and G. C here in the relative position on the figure below is having angle G, and they are corresponding angles. Okay? It goes to show that also B and F are on the same relative position, or they are on the relative position. So they are also called corresponding angles. D and H also. And take note that corresponding angles also are congruent angle pairs. Okay? So we proceed to next. Another pairs of angles can be named from the same figure actually. Parallel lines can be transversal. This time we can pair C and F. Also D and E. Look, what is the relationship between C and F and D and E? So C and F and D and E are what we call alternate interior angles. Alternate. You know the meaning of alternate, right? When one is on the left, the other is on the right, right? And then interior because they are inside the parallel lines. Do you see them? C and D is between, or C and D are between these two parallel lines. Also E and F. But we are pairing C and F because they are on the alternate or on different sides of the transversal, left and right. Also D and E, they are on opposite sides of the transversal, right and left, or left and right. So we call them alternate interior angles. Are alternate interior angles also congruent, just like vertical angles in congruent or corresponding angles? Yes, they are congruent. You see? Congruent angles also are the alternate interior angles. Next. Alternate exterior angles. Okay, just like alternate interior angles, alternate because One is on the left side of the transversal while the other is on the right side of the transversal. Exterior because they're on the outside. Exterior means outside. So they're on the outside of these parallel lines. Look at that. A and H, aren't they on the outside? Yes, they're on the outside here. Down, H is on the down and A is on the upper part. And B and G, they are exterior angles. Okay, alternate because left and right. So what does it say? What does it say when we have alternate exterior angles? Are they also congruent? Yes, they're also congruent, just like alternate interior angles. So alternate exterior angles are also congruent pairs of angles. Okay, can we proceed? Next pairs of angles. We have, look at that. C now is paired to angle E. And F is paired to angle D. Well, as you can see, they are all in the interior side of these parallel lines. However, C and D are on the same side of the transversal. Also, F and D are on the same side of the transversal. How do we call these pairs of angles? See, C and E and F and D are the pairs called consecutive interior angles. You know the meaning of the word consecutive, right? Consecutive. Consecutive means one is next to the other, right? They're in the interior, of course, interior of these two parallel lines. And what does it say when two angles are on the consecutive interior side of the transversal? Are they also congruent? Well, this time they are no longer, or they are not necessarily congruent, but they are supplementary angles. So somehow, this is the only pair so far. This is the only angle pair where they are not, or the angles are not congruent, but just supplementary angles. Okay? I hope you're taking notes. So here